Welcome to Pointless Rewind, where I'm going to be doing a blind playthrough of Elden Ring. I love thinking about and talking about my experiences playing games in the moment, but there's no way in hell I'll ever be a streamer. I am too much of a solo gamer to make that into a social event. I also love critiquing and analyzing the crap out of video game levels, but there's no way in hell I'll ever do a game guide because I'm not very good at exploring every nook and cranny of an area. But you know what I am good at? Making stupid mistakes in video games, going in the wrong direction, fighting bosses with the wrong weapon, and dying repeatedly in hilariously stupid ways. So I thought that would actually be fun to narrate. So this is part 3 of my Inept walkthrough of Elden Ring. I hope you guys are enjoying my misadventures through the lands between. Please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your feedback. These are super fun to do, but it's even more fun when people watch them. Having just received my horse at the end of the last video, I decide the first thing to do is to take him on a test drive to the Limgrave Beach. I stop at this cliff overlooking the giant, and I decide I need to figure out early on whether or not I can jump with this horse without getting hurt. So I take him for a plunge. He immediately dies. And I'm sure Torrent's thinking, what have I gotten myself into? After respawning, Torrent and I decide that suicide is not the answer. We decide, let's ride right past him. And we do so. And that giant does scream at us and do a little bit of damage. Not much, but this teaches me that riding past enemies does not necessarily mean I'm safe. I also learned that my new Ash of War, the Storm Stomp, is going to be pretty useless. I used it 8 times on this turtle and just managed to flip him over a couple times. And I tried on the Demi-Humans and it just doesn't do what I want it to do. So I probably won't be using that ability much. Especially since my goal right now is to go back to the coastal caves and fight those Demi-Human Chiefs again. I barely did any damage last time, so flipping a couple of turtles is not going to do the job. The trip through the caves is pretty straightforward since I did my exploring in the last video. Just killed a bunch of Demi-Humans and then moved to this fog gate. Last time I played too defensively. This time I rushed that Demi-Human Chief and wail on him while trying to avoid his minions. I get in several solid swipes, taking out some of his underlings as collateral damage. But I'm realizing it's the regular enemies that are really the challenge here. Like, I keep having to use my healing flasks because damage is coming from all over the place. Eventually this chief backs himself against the fog door where I'm able to kill him. Good thing that other chief doesn't automatically activate, but I have no healing flasks left, so I don't expect this to go well. And predictably, it doesn't. He's not hard either. He's basically the exact same thing, but I didn't really stand a chance with the state I was in at this point. So I respawn, go through the cave again. This time I use this little shortcut by jumping down into this mob. I get pretty messed up, but I'm able to fend them off and heal myself with my healing spell, so it's not that big of a deal. And it saves me time, so what could go wrong? This time when I move through the fog door, I decide to focus on the regular enemies. And boy, does this not go well. I'm immediately on the defensive and have to go on the run and die pretty quickly without accomplishing much at all. Okay, attempt 3. Let's do the shortcut again. And again, the mob does some damage to me, but don't they realize I have healing spells? Like, you guys can't hurt me. This is not actually impacting anything. Why do you guys keep trying? Jeez, you guys are idiots. As for the boss, this time I decide I'm going to try out some fire arrows and shoot at the chief from afar, and I don't know, maybe that'll help me out. But I don't know why I thought that would help me with the minions, because even though I get a little bit of damage to the boss right away, the minions are on top of me and I die extremely quickly. So let's try again. Let's go back through the cave, let's do the shortcut, let's kill these easy fella. Wait, what? You motherfuckers actually killed me? Having permanently lost those 1,300 runes due to my own arrogance, I realized now's not the time for this boss. So I decided to ride out of the cave on Torrent and decided to test out that spirit jumping I found last time. It looks kind of goofy, but if it makes traversal easier without breaking my immersion, then I'm all for it. Then I go and rest at the site of grace, and Melina approaches me again. She talks about how the lights of grace are guiding me as a tarnished, and mentions that a demigod who stole one of the shards of the Elden Ring is up in Stormveil Castle, and if the lights are pointing me in that way, then the Elden Ring is kind of beckoning me. No shit, Melina. However, before heading up to that castle, there's just a little bit of prep work that needs to be done. Like, is this massive gate the only way in, or is there an alternative method of getting into Stormveil Castle? But I'm also expecting Stormveil to be like a traditional Souls level that I'm going to kind of be stuck in for several hours, so I want to make sure I'm completely done exploring the immediate area. So I start hopping up the cliffside, and a giant lightning storm starts. The combination of me not knowing whether that lightning will kill me if I stray too close, and the fact that there's a giant watching me, makes me decide I'm not going to go too far. I'm going to stick to this plateau and close to the cliffside. This is not a free pass, though, because I am assaulted by this rider on a horse. And fighting this guy while on foot is pretty tough. I get in a tiny bit of damage, but look at the size of his sword! There's no way this was going to end in any way other than my death. After respawning, I spot the rider just nearby, and I snipe at him with my arrows. He comes at me in a fury, but he falls down these little rocks, which allows me to get in a convenient jump attack, which helps me stagger him and knock him off his horse. He's still got that beastly sword, but I've got his damage down just enough that a few more swipes and I've killed him. Of course, it becomes quickly clear that I killed the wrong guy, but I'm too tired to fight him again, so this time I sneak past him to go explore some of these ruins up here. However, there's really nothing of interest up here, so it really does look like it's time to finally head to that castle. I start by hugging the cliff wall as I move around the camp, taking out a couple of soldiers who are in my way, and then I get to this next site of grace where I rest, and Melina comes and interrupts me right away. She tells me she's searching for a purpose, which I can definitely relate to, and that she had lost the purpose that her mother had given to her while inside the Erd tree a long time ago, which I can't quite relate to that. She then apologizes to me for not being a maiden, which I can relate to apologizing too much, so thank you, Melina. And then she dematerializes, which I again cannot relate to. As I walk through the gate, I start thinking that maybe I was wrong in the last video. Maybe Melina's not the bad guy. Maybe it's her mom. My ruminations are interrupted when I see that a bunch of soldiers have fortified themselves and are shooting arrows at me, and there's a giant upstairs checking things out. That giant is super predictable, as in he jumps down to assault me. It's a tough fight, especially when the archers all are around pelting me with their arrows, so I try to drag him outside of the Stormgate. He follows, and I feel like I'm handling myself pretty well. Like, this mono-a-mono stuff seems to be working here. But then this goddamn spearman interrupts. He doesn't really do much, but he makes the giant fight more difficult than it needs to be. But more importantly, if I die to that lowly spearman, that giant's going to respawn. Luckily, I prevail. Now I have no healing flasks, but I'm not going to rest yet because, again, that giant's going to respawn, and I ain't going to let that happen. So I nervously draw one soldier out from the fortifications. He comes at me, and I kill him. But doing this for every soldier over there is going to take a long time. So I call on Torrent, and I end up wasting my time anyway because it takes like 2 minutes for me to get a feel for the horseback combat. I do manage to kill them eventually, and despite how this looks, it was actually kind of fun, and even more surprisingly, I didn't get dizzy at all. And luckily, I'm rewarded by getting all my flasks back. So now I proceed past these barriers and run into another mob of enemies. These ones I take out on foot because I'm just cool like that, and then I proceed up the hill. As I go, it's getting windy and harder to see. A title card reveals that this is Stormhill, which is an ominous name for a place that has such a cute little baby Erd tree like this. I pick up a golden seed from near its roots, and look, it says it's found at the base of an illusory tree. The golden seed allows me to increase my flask charges, but first I need to find a site of grace, so I continue on up this hill. I actually thought that I was about to be entering into Stormveil when I went through that gate, so it's pretty cool that I've just entered into another area before I get to Stormveil. And this area has airborne wolves. But outside of the unorthodox entrance, these guys aren't very noteworthy. It's just spiraling in from the clouds is a bit creepy. Speaking of creepy, there's this shack but it's next to a site of grace, so I rest, level up, and use that golden seed. I then go into the shack, and this girl in red is sitting there, and she seems really, really sad. And why wouldn't she be? Her entire conversation is about how the people she came with were all dismembered and grafted onto a spider. This whole conversation is super unnerving, but I think the most interesting part is this.
You've come to be one with the spider? Well, that makes us two peas in a pod. But I don't have your courage. It's scary, you know, having your arms cut off, or legs, or your head. I want to be like everyone else, but I'm just too scared. I'm nothing but a craven.
Craven? I don't know, lady. I'm actually scared of spiders just by themselves. You just seem to be scared of having your limbs cut off to be grafted onto a spider. That seems like a legitimate fear. But more importantly, she sounds like she thinks she's missing out. Like, she makes it sound like it's a joyous occasion to be brutally dismembered and put onto an arachnid. Like, is this some sort of a perverted religious journey that the people in this world go on? At the end of this conversation, she gives me a handy set of spirit jellyfish ashes that I can use to summon if I have a specific item. And I move on, though I'm a little unnerved about going to Stormveil Castle because of aforementioned spider. Sure, she might have been just talking about the grafted scion, but something tells me it's something more intense than that. Luckily, I have things to distract myself with, like grabbing this glowing blue item. Turns out it's a stone sword key. Looks like I'm going back to the tutorial area at some point. But for now, I head back the way I came. Those wolves come plunging down. I take care of them and cautiously walk into this grassy area. My goal is to get to the edge of the cliff and look over the area that I'd been exploring for the previous 4 hours. But there's a flock of bats flying around. I suck at shooting them. The only thing that seems to happen are a bunch of misses and me waking up this giant molten statue with a huge battle axe. And I calmly and coolly leave the area. After resting a bit and leveling up my dexterity, I decide to pass the time to daytime. I then go back to where I saw that giant, and looking at it now, it looks pretty obvious. Yep, that is a giant lying there. So anyway, I proceed on towards the cliff edge. There's a statue of a chalice or astrolabe or something, and I find some starlight shards. These gradually recover your FP. They apparently used to be very popular in some place called the Eternal City, where people would put them in their drinks. So that's pretty cool. It's essentially Elden Ring caffeine. Looking over the cliff, there's nothing to see, too much wind and fog. So I start heading west towards these woods that the castle overlooks, and I spot some jellyfish. So these things are sort of just sitting about there in the middle of nowhere, and they're kind of eerie, but I just got scared off by that giant statue, so I figure I'll go check these guys out. What's the worst that could happen? Well, it turns out the worst that could happen is that they turn red when I shoot them with arrows. Why is this bad?
Boy, I tell you what, this is one... just a second, Duke. Hey, cut it out.
Yeah, I don't particularly want those jellyfish to try to have sex with me. That is not what I play Elden Ring for. So I do what Hank Hill couldn't do in that episode of King of the Hill. I go on the offensive. I kill that first horny jellyfish who shoots poison at me. I then proceed up. To my right are a bunch of aroused jellyfish, but straight ahead there are some jellyfish who are unaroused, so I choose the unaroused jellyfish. These guys are apparently not hostile immediately, but I'm kind of afraid to investigate this area and leave a bunch of these guys behind me. I feel like if I don't do something, and soon, these guys are just going to start grinding up against me. So I take one of them out, but it's too late. The others have become horny. So I begin to attack them all and infringe on these jellyfish rights to do what they please with their own bodies. As I impose my will, I realize I'm in a graveyard and some skeletons spawn. Like I discovered in the last video, these guys need to be taken down twice to be killed. After dealing with them, I take care of more of the jellyfish in this area. After killing them, I pick up this smithing stone, which if you watched the last video, you'll know that It's going to be like 20 hours before I remember that I discovered how to smith my weapons already. I start to creep forward back through the woods towards that cliff where I killed the first jellyfish, and I find that several of his brethren are still in the mood. Some of the jellyfish have resisted temptation, but my blade does not discriminate. More skeletons show up, and I realize I'm in a graveyard again. And some questions pop into my head, like, why do these jellyfish congregate around cemeteries and graveyards? Oh my god. Are these jellyfish defiling the dead? Are they just a bunch of necrophiliacs out for a midday orgy? What kind of species am I dealing with here? Regardless of how much mileage I can get out of this joke, this ends up being a bit of a slog. Like, the jellyfish are super easy, both sexually and in difficulty. And while there are many variants of the skeletons, like there's this guy who dual wields these scimitars and this crossbowman with the fun hat, it never feels like I'm anywhere close to death. Just close to letting a bunch of jellyfish get in my pants. Man, how many of these jokes can I make? As I continue this bit, I find a couple of items. There's this arterial leaf and this magical grease, which I can apply magic to my weapon. I wonder if this is effective with the jellyfish as some sort of a lubricant. Finally, after like 25 minutes and killing like 50 of these jellyfish and being covered in what looks like the semen of all 50 of those jellyfish, I kill the last one. And in front of this crypt, I find some of Godric's soldiers' ashes. I check out the item description, and it talks about how the army had fled the royal capital of the Erd Tree. This also prompts me to finally look at the item description for the ashes of the jellyfish that girl gave me earlier. The jellyfish's name turns out to be Aurelia, and it talks about how it's prone to tears because she just wants to find her way home. Oh my god. Did I misinterpret everything about these jellyfish based on an old show from the 90s? Like, are these guys just trying to get home and not trying to get laid? Did I just murder a bunch of depressed homeless people and then brag about it on YouTube? Well, I deserve to be canceled. So now it's time to lie low while those jellyfish go on a social media crusade against me. Which reminds me, please like and subscribe to my channel. Maybe that'll help distract me from all the awful things those jellyfish are saying to me. Right now all I can do is distract myself by grinding on these wolves and hanging out with that giant from earlier. But clearly this guy doesn't want anything to do with me because when I approach he angrily rises up. I attack his feet and then I get off my horse because it's easier to go after those ankles on foot. And he's already at half health, probably from falling from the sky. There are glowing embers on the back of his ankles, so I just keep slashing at them repeatedly. I know how important the Achilles are. I remember how Kevin Durant's Achilles injury completely changed the course of the 2019 NBA Finals. So things are going really well. I'm getting a lot of hits in, and he's barely able to graze me. He's just too slow on his windups. Things are looking good. And then these bats show up. And like the eagles saved Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Rings, these bats saved this giant's life. So the only reason I died is because he got some help from these timely bats. So I go back and duke it out with him, and this time I kill him. He also falls over a couple of times, which makes me wonder, did he just trip and fall down, and that's why he was lying down in the grass here? Regardless, the fight with the giant is not super difficult, which I think is as intended by FromSoft. I mean, he starts at half health for a reason. I think it's to show that he's badly damaged and not at his best. The presence of these ruin fragments here does indicate that that giant likely fell from that Sky Kingdom, so I expect I'll fight them once I find my way up there. But for now, I head east, hugging the cliff edge, until I spot these snake-like creatures. These are made out of orbs or balls or whatever. I shoot it with an arrow and it comes apart and then it sort of slithers / gyrates towards me. I kill it and it drops a ruin fragment. And then I repeat this with a couple more of these snake thingies and they all drop ruin fragments. So I wonder what these guys' roles are up in that Sky Kingdom. I should also mention that these are certainly not snakes at all. They are actually like these weird rock automatons, but I'm going to keep calling them snakes. Next, I kill a couple of wolves near these crucified people, and then I spot this fortress. It's being guarded by what looks like a big burly dude, so I decide, let me go explore around this area a little bit more. I see some more snakes that I somehow missed. They are guarding what looks like a strange blue portal that's carved into the ground. I kill all the snakes, and the portal is revealed to me to be the Stormhill Everjail. Now I have horrible memories of the Hypogean jail from Bloodborne and how that whole thing went down, so I'm content leaving this place for later. I do think the snakes' placements around this jail indicates that they are guardians of some sort, and I wonder if they are in a weakened state down here, just like that fallen giant. As I ride around a bit, I spot this giant near that fortress, and I can't believe that I didn't notice that that fortress was actually the Stormgate. Upon returning there, that burly soldier from earlier comes out and attacks me, and it's the same guy who was on the horse earlier. He's kind of brutal when I'm fighting him on foot. He's got these vicious hits and stamina-depleting attacks, and he starts glowing red, which reminds me of this. No, we're not going down that road again, and thankfully he kills me before I can take it too far. I respawn and head back, but before fighting the soldier, I notice this glowing red ball. He's that guy I called the Elden Ring version of a crystal lizard in the last video. I pelt him with some fire arrows and kill him, but turns out he's a scarab who replenishes my flasks when I kill him, and which flask he fills up depends on what color he is. So definitely not a crystal lizard. I then go and kill that soldier who killed me previously, and now I'm set to explore the Stormgate, and let me tell you, when I got to this part, I was fully expecting this to be like a labyrinthine, maze-like side dungeon. Nope, it's actually just one short passage and then like a terrace. My reward is a chest. I open it and find this talisman called the Arrow's Reach Talisman. With this area complete, I decide to fast travel back to the shack. And just a little bit of housekeeping before I head to Stormveil Castle. I go roughly northeast, but I'm turned back because of the sight of this giant and the sound of this giant. I've killed 2 of these guys, but both battles were exhausting, so I just don't want to do it right now. I do fight more of these guys, and I find their frozen raisins, which tells me that based on their choice of food and their garb, these guys hail from some sort of a mountainous or very cold region. With that done, I go to grind those wolves to level up my dexterity so I can use that flail I found in the last video. I try it out on the wolves, and it's actually harder to use than the broadsword, but it just looks so cool, and a flail is a type of weapon that I imagined Vince Clorthal would be using. I mean, just look at how badass this is. I feel like if I use this weapon on regular enemies in this game, it should inspire them to greater heights. And now it's time to head north. There's this group of soldiers and what looks like peasants as I approach the castle ramparts. I kill them, though my usage of this weapon is far from inspiring. Now, the castle lies to the left, but I decide to continue on up under the ramparts because the map shows that there's a finger reader crone up here. I'm really interested because fingers obviously are very important to the lore of this world, but also it's interesting that the map automatically put a marker for a finger reader crone when it doesn't do that for essentially anything else. So what about them is so important that they are automatically on the map? And little did I know that this question would lead to what may be the most hilariously stupid mistake I could possibly make. I cautiously move through these woods and past this plateau towards the bridge, worrying that a dragon might pop up to prevent players from sequence breaking, since this looks like it might potentially bypass Stormveil Castle. Spoiler alert, sequence breaking is how that huge mistake I make happens, but not in the way you would expect. So nothing stops me from getting to the bridge, and there's the finger reader crone, who looks suspiciously like that statue from the last video. She predictably wants to look at my fingers, and then she lays out what sounds like a pretty cool side quest, maybe?
Head to the foundation of gold tarnished. Traverse Rhea Lucaria, glintstone eventide, and reunite the half-crescents at the Grand Lift.
But alas, she tells me the bridge is collapsed, and I wish I listened to her. A little background about me and sequence breaking: I absolutely avoid it at all costs. I'm that player who plays Dark Souls and refuses to use the Master Key to skip Blighttown because I want to experience the game's natural progression, even if I've played it before. But as I pick up this Nomadic Warriors cookbook, I notice a path leading from this collapsed bridge along the cliffside that Stormveil Castle is sitting on. And I think, I bet you could just bypass Stormveil Castle right here. I gotta go explore there. I gotta see if you actually can do it. I figure that there's probably a super tough enemy over there that's preventing me from doing it. Or if I manage to bypass it, I can just fast travel back and then tackle Stormveil Castle without actually sequence breaking. Oh boy, what a fool I was. So I hop down to explore a bit, and I see one of those scarabs. I kill it expecting it to just be a flask replenishing scarab, but instead it gives me an Ash of War. Maybe some of these are like crystal lizards. This Ash of War is pretty cool. It's the storm wall. It allows my shield to deflect arrows and projectiles. Unfortunately, it does not deflect me from going up this path towards the cliffside. It's really foggy and windy up here, and I keep expecting some really difficult enemy to block my path. But I run into almost nothing for the first several minutes. Eventually, I see that I have ventured into the fog of war on the map, and the music changes, indicating I have arrived in a new area. I eventually happen upon 2 packs of wolves. I kill the first group, but then I die at the second. But it wasn't because it was difficult, it was just because I got sloppy. So sadly, this does not prevent me from coming right back here. This time I am able to kill all of the wolves, and then the title card reveals that I'm at Liurnia of the Lakes. I don't consider this sequence breaking because, hey, this is natural exploration, and I'm like, hey, I just found another area. I don't have to go and actually do anything, but I just want to check out what it looks like. So I proceed forward, and man, this is a beautiful vista. I mean, it's head and shoulders above the first one when you enter Limgrave. This is just incredible. So many landmarks, and it also looks kind of terrifying. And beyond that, I think it's so cool that I got here, that the game lets you sequence break and arrive at this area before you beat Stormveil Castle. And that there's a site of grace right here that'll allow me to just go right back to where I was so I don't actually have to sequence break. And then Melina comes to talk to me, and I proceed to sequence break, but in the stupidest way possible. She says she's been testing me on this arduous path and making sure that I'm qualified for getting the Elden Ring, and all I'm thinking is, oh my god, she's supposed to say this after getting through Stormveil. This is all out of order. She tells me she can take me to the Round Table Hold, and even though she makes it sound like it's a home base, pretty much similar to every home base in every one of these FromSoft games that I've played, my mind just jumps to the conclusion that, oh my god, this is the next dungeon after Stormveil Castle. I can't go there yet. So I refuse her offer to go to the Round Table Hold, and thus I end up not going to this game's home base for a long time. All because I sequence broke by exploring this area and assumed that Melina was encouraging me to sequence break, even though the conversation with Melina is actually FromSoft's way to prevent sequence breaking. But because I'm so used to FromSoft letting you sequence break left and right, I accidentally end up sequence breaking because I'm trying like hell to avoid sequence breaking. And that's how I find myself back at the Stormhill. While I'm completely unaware that I just made a mistake, finding that amazing vista has reinvigorated my sense of exploration, so I'm putting off going to Stormveil Castle just a bit more. After riding around for a bit, I decide now's a good time to go back to that coastal cave. I've leveled up a bit and I've got a new weapon. Let's try beating that boss. And I do discover something very interesting. The bleed effect on my flail is incredible. I mean, look at how much damage I took out of this Demi-Human Chief on one hit. Of course, this is essentially all that I achieve by doing this, because I die to these guys 7 more times here. Like, I just cannot figure out how to consistently deal with them. Sometimes I can kill one, sometimes I do no damage at all. So I decide, nope, I'm done with this, and I head out to the beach. Wait, why is the peaceful music playing when I've decided to fight this monstrosity? That's right, after being so scared that I could barely look at them in the last video, I finally decide to test my mettle against the land octopus. I start by pelting him with some fire arrows, which cause him to turn towards me and approach. I courageously rush him and cut off one of his tentacles while he smacks me with his other tentacle, which causes me to back off. He then eats that other tentacle, which allows him to heal. Man, I knew that land octopus were nutritious, but not this nutritious. I barrel forward and smack him a few more times, but he starts just swinging his tentacles wildly, kind of like Bart Simpson does in that episode of The Simpsons. At this point, he's reattaching his tentacle, but I'm too busy smashing his head and causing it to retract like a turtle to notice. He snaps his beak at me a few times, and I smack him in the head again, which causes him to vomit. I should really get him checked out for a concussion. This entire fight is disgusting, like the sound design is nauseating. And visually, I mean, just look at him. He's covered in eggs, slime, tentacles. He's hideous. But I'm glad that I fought and killed this guy this time, because usually that tension is gone. I'm not super scared of fighting them anymore. I mean, look at how efficiently I took out this guy. So now I set my sights on the other big guy. I first snipe a couple of the little baby octopuses, and then I head in for the kill. And, oh my god, he's gone mental! What the hell is this? Yes, this guy has gone utterly ballistic at this point, and this is exactly what I was afraid of before fighting these guys, was a bunch of erratic movement, lots of random attacks, and just no time for me to react. So I back off to regroup. And when I say back off, I mean back off. I mean, look at how far I ran. This is how unnerved I was by this guy's behavior. Thankfully, he's not too tough. I switch from my flail to a faster weapon, the scimitar. And when I go back to fight him, I'm able to stagger him repeatedly and over. So the kill wasn't too tough, but I'm left with the feeling of, did any of what I just did matter? I mean, I came into the fight with these octopuses not ever wanting to fight them because I was scared of them, and I left the fight essentially not wanting to fight them because I'm still scared of them. So another productive day for Vince Clorthal. At least I can conclusively say that when I investigate this little corner of the beach that I discover that there's nothing there. Except, can I really say that? Because there are these ethereal footsteps that keep on circling around me, and I have no idea what they are. But they must mean something. So again, did I really achieve anything? At this point I grind a little bit. I figure I've explored enough of the areas that I've seen so far. Seems like a good idea to level up a bit, and that it's time to tackle the first real major dungeon of the game, Stormveil Castle. But wait, I find some chain-draped armor, and I think, maybe this is the difference between winning and losing against those Demi-Human Chiefs. So I put it on, fast travel to the coastal caves, and try my luck against them again. And as you can see, nothing has changed. So now it's really time to head to Stormveil Castle. So I go through those soldiers, and I arrive at this fork in the road. I go left, and I walk into this grassy area, and I am absolutely swarmed by all of these soldiers. I stand no chance at this point. I respawn at a nearby Stake America, and I ride around with Torrent. It's still really difficult. I'm still getting hit left and right. So many soldiers. I'm using up so many flasks. But I managed to kill enough of them that it replenishes my flasks. So now I think, I've cheesed enough with Torrent. I'm going to do the rest of this on foot. So I walk forward and immediately get exploded by some artillery. So I think, you know what I haven't done in a while? I haven't ridden Torrent. So I ride Torrent and cheese the area again, killing all the remaining stragglers. This allows me to finally enter into Stormveil Castle. I head through this tunnel, resting at this site of grace on my way, and then go through this doorway with a summon sign next to it, which is clearly the entrance to a boss arena. It's a bridge on the approach to Stormveil Castle. It reminds me of the bridge where you fight the Taurus demon in Dark Souls. And then we get a cutscene of Margit, the fell Omen, introducing himself. He says a whole lot of nothing. Like, he essentially tells me the same thing that every NPC has told me all throughout the game, except he does it while looking like a hideous man-goat. And yes, I said goat. I don't know why. This guy just gives off strong centaur/goat vibes to me. The fight itself, man, it's hilarious how naive I was back then, because my first thought was, he's kind of easy. Like, for some reason, after dealing with those Demi-Human Chiefs, this fight felt manageable. Like, I'm able to avoid his crazy, gnarled branch attacks, and what little damage he does to me is using these holy conjured blades that do a little damage through my shield. But I feel like I'm doing good. Like, when he actually uses that massive tail to attack me, it still doesn't do any damage, it just depletes my stamina. When he finally does do some direct damage to me, I manage to heal and then immediately do crazy bleeding damage with my flail on him. And it's that attack that lulled me into a sense of security with this guy, because I was like, man, look at how much of his health I got down. Even when he summons this giant holy hammer and giant holy sword and kills me with them, I'm thinking, hey, I got him into phase 2 of this boss fight on my first try. This is probably going to take me like 5 attempts. However, I got to give myself a little bit of credit, because I think on the second attempt I realized what a beast Margit is. Like, look at how little damage I'm able to do when I can't get my bleed effect to hit. It's also here that I realize that I can't quite get Margit's attack rhythms down. He strikes just slightly later than I expect, which ends up with me rolling out of the way too early and getting massive damage. And finally, I found healing to be difficult during this attempt, because when I kept trying to do it, he would just throw those damn daggers, which would damage me while I was healing. And the way I actually died here is he got me down to a tiny bit of health with that branch attack and then just threw a dagger into my shield. So I think attempt number 2 humbled me, but I think it's attempt number 3 where I realized I might not be able to do this for a while. Like, I do a better job of just keeping my shield up the entire time, including when I'm up close with Margit. This way he just sort of misses me with his melee attacks without me having to roll. And I learn how to avoid some of his standard attacks, like this overhead attack. Then again, that's like Souls 101. I am slowly chipping away at his health, but this is a mentally exhausting fight. Like, it takes me forever to get his health down to about 2/3 left, and then one slip up and I'm dead. So I try 5 more times. I tried different weapons, I tried being more aggressive, I even accidentally tried two-handing my shield, which does nothing but make me look even less competent. No success whatsoever. This isn't a matter of me just dying instantly. Like, I'm able to stick with him for several minutes at a time, but with the amount of damage I'm doing, it would take me like 50 minutes to beat this guy. That's way too long when I'm just draining these health flasks left and right. Plus, I'm not getting far enough in the fight to learn any of his moves in his second phase. So it's around this point where I realize I need to be able to upgrade my weapons. I'm not going to be able to beat this guy until I'm able to damage him more. And while I'm right about needing to upgrade my weapons, let's not just skim past my stupidity. If you recall from my last video, I discovered how to upgrade my weapons like 6 in-game hours ago. It's just that I have completely forgotten it. But wait, there's more. You remember this conversation with Melina where she tells me to go to the round table hold? And do you remember how I thought it was sequence breaking because it all happened after I went around on the cliffside past Stormveil Castle before having the conversation? Well, actually, that was FromSoft trying to help me. That was their way of preventing players from putting off going to the round table hold for too long, because that conversation's supposed to happen after you fight Margit for the first time. Like, if I had just headed to Margit right away and fought him, I would have gotten that conversation with Melina and been like, oh, I gotta go to the round table hold right now, where I would find a helpful blacksmith. Instead, here I am stuck at this damage sponge boss, knowing I need to upgrade my weapons, but I've forgotten that I've found a smithing table, and I'm avoiding the location where the blacksmith is found because I'm assuming it's an out-of-sequence major dungeon. So when do I figure out that I made these horrible mistakes? Well, you'll have to tune in for part 4 of my Inept walkthrough. Though, honestly, it's going to be a little bit past part 4 when I actually figure this out. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this and don't mind that this is less a walkthrough of how to play the game and more a walkthrough of how I played the game incorrectly, please like and subscribe and leave any comments. I'd love to hear from y'all.